achieved.
What you just heard is the sound of Jon Jones' career. It's the direction it is taking. For those of you who might have missed it, it's the sound of a toilet flushing, and this is ridiculous. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, Jon Jones is no longer the UFC light heavyweight champion because the man is a moron. He is the peak of his athletic potential. He is bringing in serious money. He's dominating all the competition, wiping out the division, almost on the verge of another massive title fight, and the man goes and does something incredibly stupid. Let me give you the very abbreviated quick rundown. Sunday is when the alleged hit and run takes place. Monday, the man turns himself into authorities and eventually posts bail. I think it was about $2,500. Tuesday, felony court hearing, followed by him being stripped of the UFC title. And Wednesday, Reebok terminates his deal, and he's pulled from the UFC rankings, both as the light heavyweight champ, obviously, and as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter on the planet. It's an embarrassing run of events for this Jon Jones, and he could be facing some serious jail time. It'll be a long time before we see him back inside the UFC cage. And Daniel Cormier and Anthony Rumble Johnson will be fighting for the title. Now, Chael Sonnen made an excellent point saying that the UFC, instead of stripping him, cut him, get rid of him altogether. You have to get him out of there. You can't just strip him and say, okay, you're still with us, but you're not the champion anymore. But the UFC recognizes what they have in him. If he does come back, he's a massive money earner nonetheless. And they're holding on to him. But yeah, there is, whether Johnson comes away with the title or Cormier, there's always going to be that thing, especially with Cormier. You've already lost to Jon Jones. And with Johnson, you still have to beat the man to be the man. Woo! Ric Flair style. It's an interesting situation. We'll see how it plays out, but it'll make the UFC very interesting as far as the light heavyweight division is concerned. I would actually like to see them string together an 8-man tournament. Cormier, Johnson, Gustafsson, Teixeira, get OSP in there, get Bader in there, get returning Rashad Evans in there. 8-man tournament, really play it up, explode this scenario, and turn it into a positive for MMA, because people will tune in to watch that and maybe might feel the title's a little bit more legitimate, the title reign. We are, on this episode of the show, breaking down the upcoming UFC Fight Night 65 event, which will take place in Australia. 4-fight main card, which will be giving my predictions for. All of my main preliminary predictions available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. I went 9-3 in the last show, and it was a pretty solid event, but I got to give a shout out to the prediction panel. Ryan Windsor went 9-3. He matched my record. Ryan Poley had an incredibly awesome night, going 11-1. And hats off to Mitchell Davies, a perfect 12-0, nailing all 12 fights correctly on the card. So good for all you guys. Good for, so make sure you're checking out those predictions. As far as the bet packs are concerned, pretty decent. I had multiple parlays. I think it was 122 units, so potentially almost $1,300 in winnings that we missed out on because of one fight, particularly the Sarah Kaufman fight, which she was dominating. That really cost me. It was very unfortunate. So certainly consider buying them. $10 for this bet pack, or you can buy all 4 in that month of May for $30, which saves you $10 if you're interested in that. Also, the DraftKings competition, make sure you sign up for that. Head over to DraftKings, click on any of the links on my website, and you can check out any of the cool competitions and contests they have there. It's been a pretty long intro, so let's get to that first prediction. We open with our first fight of the evening in the UFC's lightweight division as Jake the Celtic Kid Matthews, 9-0, battles the Texecutioner, 7-0, James Vick. Very good matchup. Both guys undefeated, very young, both on the rise. Remember, they're in a talent-filled division, very tough division to crack the elite level. So a win here moves the winner on, but still you have a long way to go to get to the elite. Matthews, he's really starting to develop and round into that top young Australian talent. He's 2-0 so far in the UFC. For Vick, nice to see a little regularity out of the guy. 2-year absence between fights. The first time around, then he had a year-long layoff after that fight. A lot of it due to injuries. Now this is his 3rd fight in his last 8 months, so a little bit more regularity that should benefit him. Physically, Vick, very tall for the division. Will have a 6-inch height advantage, a 4-inch reach advantage. But keep in mind, Matthews is a very large lightweight, very muscular, very thick. Both overall relatively inexperienced. Matthews 8 professional fights, Vick 7. But keep in mind, Vick had 4 fights on the live season of Tough, and the guys he faced, it's an impressive row. He had wins over Dakota Cochran, Darren Cruikshank, who he knocked out, and Joe Proctor, and he lost to Michael Chiesa in the tournament semifinals. That's a good lineup of opposition. Matthews did compete on Tough Nations. He only lost He only fought and he lost once to Olivier Aubin-Mercier. It was by submission in his one appearance on that show. Win totals, Matthews 2 wins in the UFC. Keep in mind here they came over fighters with a combined UFC record of 1 win and 5 losses. So certainly not big-time talented opposition. Overall, Matthews 3 wins by knockout, 4 wins by sub. 5 of those stoppage wins, though, have come after the first round. So the guy's very good at, he's not just a one-round fighter. For Vick, 1 win by knockout, 3 submissions, 3 decisions. He also had a knockout on the show, which he recorded, as I mentioned, over Cruikshank. For Matthews, he offers some very nice low kicks, really batters his opponent's lead leg, geez, I can't speak tonight, sets it up really nicely with a jab, and I expect him to use those leg kicks to deal with the reach of Vick a little bit. I also like the way he checks kicks. They're very effective. Watch for that in this fight. I think that'll if Vick tries to throw some low kicks at him, especially some sloppy ones, look for Matthews to make him pay. He throws a nice left jab, straight cross combination, sometimes a little bit too often, wants to be a little more, less predictable than he has been, and a Superman punch, which can be also, a nice technique. Takedown-wise, Wagner Host tried to take him to the mat. He defended that takedown very, nicely. Nice single leg offensively, tried to bully Hosho, which is something he was fairly successful at, and he eventually locked up a rear naked choke with no hooks, which was pretty impressive considering he's doing against a BJJ black belt. And in his first fight, he had 4 takedowns against Jon Jones before he finished that matchup. For Vick, exceptionally big reach, fights very long, kind of pretty mobile on his feet, good distance management, active jab, keeps flicking it out there and keeping his opponent at bay. He has a nice stepping knee. I believe he knocked out Cruikshank with a knee. In his last fight, he was struggling a little bit against Nick Hein, made some nice adjustments, and eventually pulled that fight out. On the negative, though, he keeps his hands very low, does leave his chin exposed a little bit as well, and he's been dropped a couple times in his fight, and he was also letting Nick Hein be much more active in the striking department. And going back to the fact that he lets his hands down, because he's so taller, it's like a flagpole. He's out there, he's exposed. The opponent can come over the top with an overhand right or left and really crack him. If the fight does hit the mat, he's very tricky on the mat. Long limbs, variety of submissions. We saw him submit Ramsey Nijum. He will attack off his back. He was taken down 4 times by Valimir Lazaro, who trains out of Nova União, but for the most part, Vick was able to get up and avoid spending too much time there. One thing I don't like, though, with Vick, he tends to open himself up when he attacks, and defensively there are some gaps. He leaves himself vulnerable, being countered with strikes and taken to the mat, and that's a big concern. Additionally, fighting in Australia can be very difficult. It's the first time he's fought outside of the United States. There's the time change issue. The fight is taking place at 11 p.m. Eastern time, so that might not be that big of an issue, but still, it's a change of pace, and that's something Vick will have to deal with. To me, Vick appears to be too open defensively, and he was outlanded and taken down multiple times by Lazaro. He let Nick Hein be the aggressor in that matchup. I expect Matthews to push the pace. I think he'll mix up his attacks between grappling and striking very effectively, be the aggressor, really control that octagon, and my prediction is Jake Matthews to defeat James Vick by decision. Fight number 2 takes place in the now wide open UFC light heavyweight division. We could be looking at a future champion here. Probably not, but still, it's a fun matchup. Anthony the Hippo Perosh, 15-8-0, battling Sean, the real OC O'Connell, with a current record of 16 wins and 6 losses. Now, Perosh is fighting at home in Australia. He's 3-2 on his native soil when fighting in the UFC. For O'Connell, this is actually his second trip to Australia. He fought in Auckland last time out, losing a very close split decision against Gian Vellante. What we have here is primarily a matchup of a striker versus a grappler. Perosh wants this fight on the mat. That's pretty undeniable for O'Connell. For the most part, he's going to want to slug this out on the feet. O'Connell, 8 of his 16 wins have come by knockout, including his TKO of Matt Van Buren in his last appearance. For Perosh, 10 wins by submission. He's never been submitted on the other side of things. He has 3 in the UFC, tapping out Cyril Diabate. And he also, Guto Innocent, she sent him packing, submitting him, and I think I got him canned from the UFC. He also has a ground-based TKO over Nick Penner, which was generated predominantly because of his skills on the mat. Both guys have recently fought Ryan Jimmo. Perosh suffered a brutalizing 7-second knockout. O'Connell was also knocked out, but it happened at the other end of the scale with 30 seconds left in the opening round. O'Connell does have 3 losses by knockout. He's also been submitted twice. So he's been finished a couple of times. That's worth noting there. And for Perosh, he's been knocked out 5 times. So both guys are starting to accumulate some high finishing rates, at least in the losing column. So there's a good chance this fight might not be going the distance. For the most part, Anthony Perosh, he continues to overachieve. He looks like your second period math teacher when you look at the dude. He's very surprisingly capable. He's overachieved in the UFC. He's won 5 of his last 7 fights. His only losses being against Ryan Bader, who could potentially be fighting for the title in the not too distant distant future, and of course the aforementioned Ryan Jimmo. Perosh averages 2.15 takedowns at a 22% completion rate. Not great numbers, but he still finds the way to get the fight to the mat, which is damn impressive when you're picking him, and not so much when you're picking against him. Minimal takedowns for him needed to win, though. That's the thing. One or more. He said no more than 2 takedowns in a fight. So get the fight to the mat, and he does the job getting it done. Can O'Connell stay vertical? Big question in this matchup. Perosh, he's not a great wrestler, not very athletic, and has a very basic striking repertoire, but he still found a way to get in range against guys like Cyril Diabante, who's a very dangerous striker. Eventually drag the fight to the mat and go to work. When you look at what O'Connell's done against guys who try to take him down, Vellante went 0 for 1, Ryan Jimmo went 1 for 1. But I think Perosh is going to be the first guy who's going to be so takedown-centric in his attack, and we'll see if O'Connell can defend that. What O'Connell does well, he landed 153 strikes against Vellante. Damn impressive. He's 5-1 in decisions, so that's pretty solid as well. So he knows if he goes the distance, he's in good shape, especially considering Perosh is 0-3. If O'Connell can take this fight the distance, keep it standing, he's going to win this matchup. He's going to look to brawl in this fight, land that big shot, potentially shut Anthony off and knock him out, add that 6th knockout to his record. Perosh being taller is going to leave him open for O'Connell to come over the top with some power, overhand right, overhand left. I believe he's got a pretty nasty left hand, but he's got power in both hands as far as I can remember, actually. But the thing is, with O'Connell being short, it's also going to force him to close the distance and try and land strikes as he's coming forward, and it's going to leave him open being countered and potentially taken down. O'Connell's going to need to be active. He's going to be active, start to finish, not be sloppy. He tends to run into strikes. That's what got him knocked out against Ryan Jimmo. That's what's going to get him in trouble here. I think Perosh is going to drag this fight to the mat, drop some ground and pound that could either create a finish or lead to the opening for a submission win. And my prediction is Anthony Perosh, potentially by rear naked choke, to defeat Sean O'Connell. I'll take the Aussie by submission. We are now in the co-main event. We're in the UFC's middleweight division as 13-4-0 Brad Tavares takes on 14-4-0 Robert Whittaker, Ultimate Fighter winner Robert Whittaker. That's the second fight at middleweight for Whittaker. He knocked out Clint Hester in a bit of an upset in his first fight, and it's his second opportunity to compete as a 185er after starting in the UFC at 170 pounds. Brad Tavares will have a 1-inch reach advantage and a 1-inch height advantage, but the speed could favor Whittaker and the advantage of him not having to cut so much because he isn't a big middleweight. Now, both guys are fairly solid strikers and rely on it primarily as their, number one weapon. Whittaker 6 wins by knockout, including Devin Hester, which has surprised many. He also knocked out Colton Smith. Brad Tavares just 4 wins by knockout, his only UFC win coming over Phil Baroni, and shockingly enough, this is the second time in consecutive shows I've made reference to Phil Baroni, talking about him actually in my preliminary predictions, how Joe Diesel Riggs had beat him recently. Tavares has a lot of striking-based decisions. Let's keep it in mind. So even though he's not knocking guys out, he does rely on striking heavily to get those decisions. Overall, strikes landed per minute, Whittaker has the edge at 1.6 strikes, more than Tavares in a minute. But defensively, Tavares tighter, getting hit at about almost 2 strikes less per minute, but 1.85. Style-wise, Tavares, more of a Muay Thai-based striker, strong kicks, good knees, elbows, uses all his weapons very effectively. Whittaker, for my money, tends to be a little bit more boxing-based. He has good hands, respectable power. He's a little bit of an unorthodox style. We've seen a little bit less of that of late. Keep in mind as well, though, both men have recently been beaten in striking-based fights as well. Tavares was knocked out by Tim Boetsch, but the asterisk is there is that he was predominantly winning that matchup until he got knocked out in the second round. He's looking very good until Boetsch caught him. If Tim Boetsch catches you on the butt with the power he has the ability to knock just about anybody out. For Whittaker, he was knocked out by Stephen Thompson, for the most part outclassed in that matchup, but he also dropped a decision to Court McGee and was badly outworked. McGee winning the strikes landed battle 99-49, showing just simply outworking Robert Whittaker. So he's kind of knocking out and getting decisioned in a fight that, is in his wheelhouse. Tavares, his most one-sided and definitive loss actually came against Yoel Romero. He gave up 7 takedowns. He was never really in that matchup start to finish. Romero just ragdolled him. And prior to that, he lost a matchup to Aaron Simpson where he lost a takedown battle. And that's the big thing. Tavares has landed more takedowns in 5 of his 8 wins than his opposition, and he has limited his opponents to 1 or less in the other 3 fights. So it seems like takedowns, both offensively and defensively, is the key to Brad Tavares' success. If you can take him down and out-wrestle him, that's your key to victory. If you can't, that really favors him significantly. And Robert Whittaker, he's never landed more than a takedown in a fight, so keep that in mind. So that's something, if he can't augment his attack with that, that really favors the American. If Tavares wins the takedown battle, Whittaker's going to need to outstrike him badly, both in quality and quantity of strikes, and potentially knock him out, which obviously it's not impossible, but potentially improbable. Look for Tavares to land a couple of takedowns, utilize the clinch and control him along the cage, kind of wear him out, really take some of that range striking that Whittaker's going to offer in this matchup. I also think Tavares will be a little more diversified with his striking, land some leg kicks. Defensively, he'll be a little bit tighter, keep things at range when he does, and not take a lot of damage there. Tavares, though, he needs to be on point, press the pace, don't let his opponent be busier than him, and give the Australian judges any reason to give him a hometown decision. But my prediction is Brad Tavares to defeat Robert Whittaker. I'll take Tavares by decision. In the main event of the evening, we are in the UFC's heavyweight division. It's the number 4 ranked Stipe Miocic, 12-0, battles the number 5 ranked fan favorite, the Super Samoan Mark Hunt, with a current record of 10 wins, 9 losses, and a single draw. Now, the winner will be very close to a title shot, maybe one more win. All depends on what the Cain Velasquez situation is. The division is shallow. Neither guy, well, Hunt has just recently fought for the interim title. Miocic hasn't, so certainly a win could get them closer to being an option for the UFC brass to stick in there with whoever comes out of the Verdum Velasquez fight. Both are coming off big losses. Hunt lost to Verdum, as I said, in the interim title fight. He was doing quite well before getting knocked out in the second round. For Miocic, he lost a 5-round decision to former champion and multiple-time title challenger Junior Dos Santos. It was a very close fight. I picked Stipe in that matchup, and I felt he was winning going into the final round. Junior gutted it out and did very well in that matchup, but Stipe looked exceptional, especially in the first half. Physically, big mismatch here. Stipe, 6-inch height advantage, 8-inch reach advantage. He is a massive heavyweight, where Hunt, not so much. Big man, but not the typical size of a heavyweight. Stylistically, what we have here is Stipe's wrestling and boxing against Hunt's kickboxing. Both guys have big-time power. Stipe Miocic, 8 wins by knockout, 3 inside the octagon, stopping light heavyweight Fabio Maldonado, also taking care of Shane Del Rosario, may he rest in peace, and the Brit Philip DeFries. For Mark Hunt, 7 wins by knockout, 4 in the UFC, 3 of those wins coming over Czech Congo, Stefan Struve, and Roy Nelson, and that's a much more impressive list. Very noteworthy guys that he has knocked out, especially the last one, Roy Nelson. For Stipe, 1 knockout loss in his career, which came to Stefan Struve. Mark Hunt's been knocked out 3 times, most recently to Fabricio Verdum, and Junior Dos Santos also got knocked out by Melvin Manhoef quite a number of years back. Mark Hunt, we know what he's all about. He's a devastating striker, very good kickboxer, stays very calm. I guess the Verdum fight, I'd say he was almost too calm. I think it could have been a bit of the fear of being taken down. He likes to sit just out of range and really leap into his strikes. He has a nice leaping right, leaping left hook, swarm his opponent as he gets them backing up and covering up, looking to land maybe an uppercut or something in that exchange, what he put Roy Nelson out with, that nasty uppercut. He also has some very hard leg kicks. Maybe doesn't use them as often as he should. We did see him land a very hard one against Verdum, but they do open up the possibility of being taken down. For Mark Hunt, cardio is a bit of an issue, but he's still very dangerous. Even later in fights, we saw that sloppy mess against Stefan Struve that eventually broke his jaw and knocked him out. When he did get knocked out by Verdum, it was with a big knee strike, which led to the TKO. He has, as I said, 3 losses by knockout. He was dropped by Bigfoot. He has a cinder block for a head, but are there cracks starting to show in heavyweight? How much damage can you take? Even somebody like Roy Nelson eventually will go down, and that's a big question here. For Miocic, when he fought Junior Dos Santos, I really liked his approach. He shot for the takedown early on. Take a page out of Cain Velasquez's book. Didn't land the takedown, but he backed Junior up, and he immediately gave him something else to think about. This is not just a striking contest. We're going to wrestle as well. And he's a good wrestler, former NCAA wrestler. Top control is very good. Now, Mark Hunt has excellent takedown defense, but he can be taken down. And, even if he can't, Stipe can be effective using that technique, making guys, focus on defending takedowns. Keep in mind the distractions can be issue. A distraction being taken down can be a major issue. We saw him against Junior Santos. When Junior was defending the takedowns, Stipe would change gears and land short shots, especially up against the cage, and back and forth. It gives his opponent a lot of fronts to worry about being attacked on. I like the way Stipe boxed up Junior at points. He landed some nice little crisp strikes. He was beating to the punch. He was folding his boxing and wrestling in very effectively in that matchup. Now, in this fight, he needs to avoid being tagged with some big shots. He did a nice job of avoiding the big strikes from Junior Dos Santos for the most part. And if he didn't gas out, I think he wins that fight. I think he'll show a similar approach here to what he did against Roy Nelson. Lots of movement, don't stay stationary, force Mark Hunt to move and chase you and follow you and not just be there to let him hit you as well. Hunt is more technical than Nelson, but he also, just like Nelson, has to cover a lot of distance if he's going to do damage. Hunt, for the most part in his career, especially in the UFC, he's lost to bigger, more athletic, and quicker fighters who hit hard. Junior Santos and Fabricio Verdum. Against guys like Roy Nelson and Ben Rothwell and Czech Congo, and I guess Struve after he slowed down, they're much more stationary, easier targets to tag, and that's where Hunt exceeds. I think Miocic falls into the first category, not the second. I think he's going to show a lot of jabs, a lot of wrestling, wear Hunt out, force him to do a lot of things he's not comfortable with, eventually hurt him with some strikes, and my prediction, this might not be popular, but Stipe Miocic to defeat Mark Hunt will take Stipe by knockout. So flame away, folks. Yes, I'm picking Mark Hunt to lose by knockout. It's happened 3 times. It could very well happen a 4th. Even though this is a very fun-looking card, top to bottom, there are a number of really exciting-looking fights. Even if you don't know the guys, do a little research. You'll see there's some pretty competitive fights. The betting odds look fantastic. Certainly consider buying the bet pack. Buy the May bet pack. You get basically buy 3, get 1 free if that's what you're looking at. I think this card actually opens up an hour after it normally does. But nonetheless, I'm pretty excited for it. We've had a nice week, which always gets me re-energized, as you can probably tell. The Jon Jones thing is just ridiculous. I was going to do a blurb about cage grabbing, and then this happened. I went, oh, frig, I don't need to talk about that now. Jon Jones, thank you very much for a little bit of material. Either way, that's enough from me. I'll talk to you again sometime. Bye, guys.